Hi, my name is Chelsea. You can find me at Cowboy Chels on all forms of social media. I like to talk about makeup, a little bit of sustainability, lots of books, general this and that. Our background is different today due to the fact that I have moved across the country. It was a 36-hour drive on the second go around because I did complete this trip twice. The car broke down, so I had to fly the rest of the way. But here we are. I now live in the Pacific Northwest, which before this I had quite literally never been here. So it's totally new to me, and I think that's the best part of it. There's that study that's like, if you do the same thing over and over, your brain kind of starts to mush it together and it feels like life is moving so fast. But if you do new things, your brain can't mush the memories together, and so it feels like life is passing slower. I really like it. I like our new place. Let me show you. Isn't that cute? Kind of this fireplace that we're situated in front of. It's unusable, so I just stuffed it full of books. All that being said, while preparing for the move and then actually doing the move, I read a lot of books. So here is my June and July wrap up. The Thousandth Floor by Catherine McGee. I have said on here before that I will eat up any kind of culture or country. If it's the 1% and they have interpersonal dramas, I want to read about it. It's escapism. It is. I watched Gossip Girl at a formative age. This is a story about 5 young adults, varying classes, set in Manhattan in 2118. To combat the population crisis and housing crisis, they've built this building of 1,000 floors. It has multiple malls, salons, it has the new Central Park, many schools, all these different classes living on top of each other. Lower on the 1,000th floor that you are, the poorer you are, then all the way to the penthouse on the top. It is very sci-fi Gossip Girl, and I ate it up. I gobbled it up. I was thrilled by their dramas. And let me tell you, there is a particular storyline that is just foul. I have such a large to be read shelf right now that I'm kind of pausing sequels, but I cannot wait to continue this series and read what those fucked up teens are doing. Olga Dies Dreaming by Xochitl Gonzalez. This is a family drama set in New York. It's about a successful Latina wedding planner and her family. Her brother is a politician and her mom was a young lord turned radical, has abandoned them for the greater political cause. I've always had a hard time like parsing what is plot driven versus character driven whenever I'm asked after reading a story. To me, they've always just felt like books. This was very character driven, and because of that, it had, to me, what felt like a very unique energy to it. I will say there is something particular towards the end that came kind of out of the blue and was very shocking, and I just wasn't ready to read it because I wasn't expecting it. I recommend it. I was just startled. Down Among the Sticks and Bones by Seanan McGuire. I was just at Powell's bookstore in Portland. I kept coming across the name Mira Grant, and I was like, God, this is so familiar. Of course, Mira Grant is the pen name for Seanan McGuire. It's the second in the Wayward Children, and I was very psyched for it because it features the twins. It's definitely a cozy horror recommendation. It's twin sisters who fall into this world that is ruled by a vampire master. There is a mad scientist there are creatures in the woods, and the village that's just trying to survive. One of the twin sisters is taken under the wing of the mad scientist, and the other is taken under the wing of the vampire. This is a novella. It's less than 200 pages, and I really didn't feel like you had to read the first to understand it. So if you need something that's just kind of like spooky kooky to get you in the mood for fall coming up, I would recommend this. Head Like a Hole by Andrew Van Wey. By the time I had realized how bad this book was, it was too late. I was so close to the end that I was just like, fine. While reading it, it's very long. Totally could have 100 pages cut out. It felt like I was drudging to get through it. Towards the beginning, I was like, oh, this is going to be 5 stars. This is phenomenal. It was very scary and fun and sea themed. And then suddenly it was so stupid. It was so stupid. This head creature with gills and tentacles brainwashes a fisherman into completing evil tasks for her. He kills multiple people. This is all set in the 90s. And it turns out all the people that he is killing are part of this friend group that was in a high school boarding school. The creature is trying to form a new body, so the people that he's killing off one by one, she's taking the hands, the eyes, the skin, etc. Here's the sitch. When I talk bad about a book, it is always with the respect of they wrote a book. I have not written a book. They wrote it and they published it, and because of that, I respect the hell out of them. However, this read very much like he had everything plotted out up until the third act when he had to explain everything, and then it was very rushed and unestablished. So much happened that I can't even spoil it for you and it make a lick of a sense. Sign here by Claudia Lux. A human turned demon is working in the lair of hell in which they make deals for souls. He is told a bit of lore in which that you can escape hell if you make enough deals with your lineage. So like your family when you were a human, your descendants or whatever. Time is a little wonky, so it could either be your ancestors or descendants. You make enough deals with those human souls, you are able to escape hell. He gets to the point where he just needs to claim one more soul for his family, and you switch through his perspective and a bunch of different heads in the family. I liked the book well enough, and if the premise intrigues you, then I would recommend it. A lot of people have thought it was very funny. I just wish so badly that I was like in the editor's room while this book was being written.
I have not written a book.
I feel that it could have been so good.
I have not written a book.
It's hard to put into words, but I feel like a lot of the characters put down little threads that were not woven to until the end. And because of this, it almost underestimated the characters. It just didn't feel wholly satisfying by the end of it. Clockwork Angel by Cassandra Clare. This was the very first Cassandra Clare book I have ever read in my life. I was never in that realm of reading when I was growing up. I know that these are very nostalgic for a lot of people, and whenever I go through YouTubers like listing their favorite series of all time, this is always really high up on it, so I just had to finally do it. I don't think I'll necessarily complete the series unless I just happen to have a lot of time on my hands, but I did have a lot of fun. I was very like sucked into the Victorian steampunk of it all. I've never really read steampunk books before, but this I felt like fit so wholeheartedly. There's just so many inventions and new technology happening in the Victorian era that creating a world around magical invention felt very seamless and natural to the environment. The tagline for the story is "Magic is dangerous, but love is more dangerous still." I wouldn't have necessarily considered this a romance. It's like a light subplot, I felt. I'm sure that as you continue in the series, it becomes more of like a in-your-face kind of thing. Basically, the 16-year-old takes a ship from America to London, which is not nearly mentioned enough. I need to know the details of this ship. And I looked it up. It took like a month to get from America to London. And she doesn't mention it at all. Who is she talking to? Because she's by herself on this ship. She doesn't have a chaperone, and she's like hoity-toity. So was she hanging out with like old ladies on the ship? That's a month of her life. Doesn't mention it ever again. She's just like, I'm in London. She is kidnapped by the forces of evil, and powers are tortured out of her. I really loved the tortured by powers of evil part. I felt like it was like, oh, no wonder this is so good. Everyone's raving about this. My interest did taper as we continued down, and I think that's because she's rescued by the good guys and she goes to live in their headquarters. A very interesting found family thing could have happened here if she dove more into who these people were. I felt like only one character was fully fleshed out, and she was like the bitchy character, which I'm always going to be partial towards a bitchy character. I think they're always like a hoot and holler. Hi, I'm editing and I don't know if you can hear me, but I was like, you know, I was wrong because Jim and the other boy, they're like pretty fleshed out, like they're at least interesting. We get some backstory, and then I realized we only get backstory for people who like live, because like a bunch of people die at the end. Must we play these tired games, Cassandra? However, I can see why it was very popular, and I can see why so many people love it. I also want to say that if you like Good Omens and you happen to have not read this yet, you'll enjoy it. After reading this novel, I wish she liked the other boy instead of the boy that she does like. Tale as old as time. And of course, I cannot mention Cassandra Clare without mentioning incest. I'm unfamiliar, but I've seen enough videos to know. Apparently, this series is the prequel for the series that contains incest, which is City of Bones. I just realized there are 3 books in my wrap-up that can be linked to incest, so I'll just leave that there and you can figure it out yourself, I guess. Set on You by Amy Leah. I picked this book up about a plus-size content creator purely because I am, believe it or not, a plus-size content creator. Crystal Chen is in the Fitstagram world, hosts all her body positive workouts on Instagram. She starts angry banter with this guy at the gym, and it leads to a very hot makeout session in the gym bathroom. However, I do think this like makeout session that happened between them was the hottest thing that happened between them after they like get to know each other and pursue wait, you know what? I'm remembering things now. I take that back. The sex scenes were okay. It was good. After this makeout session, they see more and more of each other through shenanigans and end up dating. The negative comments that she received online for being fat were very realistic, so I appreciated that. I did think her obsession with Lizzo was a bit on the nose, and I absolutely must spoil this part of it, so if you plan on reading Set on You, skip ahead like 30 seconds. The 3rd act breakup is him defending her in her Instagram comments against online trolls. I had to like put the book down, stand up, and like walk around my house because I was filled with so much anxiety over the thought that something would happen where I was receiving an influx of hate and my partner got into my comments and was talking to people. I'm feeling like sick rise up at the thought of it. How humiliating. The secondhand ick that I experienced from that gave me like full body chills. And I have witnessed this happen to other people, and it always ends so poorly, and I just can't even imagine what's going on in their house while it's happening. They're sitting in the same room, they're both on their phone typing, and it's heinous. I don't want to talk about it anymore. All that being said, this was a really good plus size romance. If you're looking for more representation, I liked it better than some like Olivia Dade that I've read for reference. World War Z, an oral history by Max Brooks. I've seen a lot of zombie movies. I've read a lot of zombie fiction. It's just something that's gonna do it for me every time. I love the frantic energy. I love the post-apocalyptic element to them. I just like them. So of course I've seen the World War Z movie with Brad Pitt, in which he is like some army guy who's the only one that can do something to save them all, so he's protecting his family. This is a very tired trope in zombie media, and so I just never felt the need to read the book, but I found out that it's very different from the movie, and so I dove in. It's done in a way that is reminiscent of anthropology ethnologies and like kind of meets podcasting in the middle there. A researcher travels the world and interviews people in all sorts of different countries, like 15 years out from the Z War. So all of these people have survived, and they are in the burgeoning, budding societies that have happened since, and they're all talking about their experiences, what their country did in response. It was just really good. I liked it a lot. It was, you know, part of that little summerween reading. There's definitely a reason it is such a classic. Men Who Hate Women by Laura Bates. My friend Karina recommended this to me, and then while I was reading it, my partner was like, oh, have you heard of this book? So I do think it's very well known at this point, and for good reason. It's one of those books where I think as many people should read it as possible. It's a nonfiction analysis on male internet culture. It focuses on pickup artists, incels, and male rights activists, if I'm remembering correctly, and it's genuinely horrific. The author does a wonderful job at making these statistics and studies and everything be very digestible. And it's kind of horrific that there are men in everyday life who look just like anyone else. They don't look like a stereotype. They just look like anyone you would see at the bar or the grocery store, and they hate violently. And even if they specifically aren't violent, their rhetoric incites violence. The end does talk about boys and teenage boys. It fell. So if you have boys in your life and you're wondering how you can prevent this from taking root in them, check it out. Or if you are dating men, I think you should read it. It is 100 degrees outside, but I can't run my AC or fan and have you guys hear me well. I might be getting a little shiny. Secretly Yours by Tessa Bailey is the first Tessa Bailey book I have read. I'm not sure yet if I intend to read more. I think this may have been a one-off because I did thoroughly enjoy it. And I would talk to people who have kind of the same taste as me, and they were so surprised, and they all had other Tessa Bailey books that they had read and kind of not enjoyed. So I'll probably try one or two more, but we'll see. In this particular one, a woman named Hallie is in her 20s and she's a gardener in Napa Valley. She's very connected with her town of little characters, and it's very like small town cutesy kind of stuff. She is obsessed with this hottie from high school who has recently moved back home with his family. As someone who crushed intensely during my adolescence, not only do I understand her, I support her. She's crazy, and she ends up calling his mom and like talking her into a gardening deal for their property so she can go and get a glimpse of this guy again. Deliciously crazy. He does not remember her from high school, but he is attracted to her in a way. It's as if he wants to gobble her up whole. There were multiple times that I like put my Kindle down and I just like, I could not believe what I was reading with my own eyeballs. I was stunned. Very hot. I recommend it. Anatomy, a Love Story by Dana Schwartz. The sequel up here on my TBR. I was sent it ages ago by Macmillan, and I had to wait for the first one to get available from the library before I could start the second. As always, I'm utterly fascinated by body snatchers. I loved hearing about them in Stiff by Mary Roach. I love the little plot line in Good Omen Season 2. This is about a creepy society girl in the Victorian era who is being married off by her family, and she just desperately wants to become a physician. But because of sexism, she's not allowed to study with the bodies. So she forms a dalliance with a body snatcher who's a boy her aged, and she purchases bodies from him that she proceeds to take apart in her manor's dungeon. I'm a firm believer in the sentiment that I want a character to be willing to do anything, because I'm not willing to do anything, especially when it comes to stealing cadavers and cutting them up. I think this is one of my favorite YA novels that I've ever read. It was just really good. It reminded me a lot of Violet's storyline in Wayward, like that curiosity of her. My camera's battery died, so I took a break, I ran the AC and cooled down a little bit. Really Good Actually by Monica Heisey. I have such complicated feelings about this book because, okay, it's about a chubby redhead who got divorced young, only 29, and at a certain point while reading it, I was like, this is a debut. And I love debuts. I've talked about debuts a lot on this channel. It's like something very special to me. So I don't mean that in a bad way. I just knew it in my heart. And then at another point in it, I was like, this author is a chubby redhead who got divorced young. And she was. I knew it. I looked it up and I was right. And I don't really feel any type of way about that because I do think that writing through something so upsetting and so traumatic is really helpful. I just think sometimes authors who choose to explore intimate feelings through fiction rather than nonfiction are almost too close to the story, and because of that, it's an editor's job to bring them back to big picture, and I don't think that happened here. I'm getting redder and shinier as we go on. Anyway, I really liked the first 100 pages. I felt like they were well paced. There comes such a time when you're in a character's head where even though you have not literally experienced what they're experiencing, you can say it's relatable because you understand where their actions are coming from and you would do the same thing. Here's what I think would have helped this book.
I have not written a book.
I'm really just gonna like go into this really quickly. There are going to be a few spoilers ahead, but I think that you can stand it. We have a visitor, hold on. She smells so bad. I gave her a chip as a treat, so she is crunching in the corner if you can hear it. In this story, a woman who is 29, she turns 30 in the book, she gets divorced to her young love. They've only lasted a year or so. They still have the money from the wedding, which they don't give back because she is broke. She doesn't leave her house for months. When she does, she cries at work. She sees her friends and talks endlessly about her ex, which is all understandable, completely understandable. I can't even tell you how sympathetic I was at this point. I'm not even just on the character's side, I'm with her. But in her head, she is so mean to everyone around her that by the time we get to the worst of the worst arc, 100 pages later, she's lost me. I can't even say that it was something that was brought out of her through her worst moments, this vitriol for other people in her mind. It's like even people that were so kind to her, even people who are going out of their way for her in her time of need, she is like railing. By the time we got to the worst of her worst, which was phenomenally bad, truly, I cannot believe that those people would ever be friends with her again. I no longer was connected with her. I feel like I should still be with the character by the beginning of the worst, and then leave them by the end of it, only to come back with them with the redemption. Finally, we are brought to our last two books. I moved to the Pacific Northwest, therefore I was legally obligated to re-listen to Twilight and New Moon during the drive. I am Team Jacob, so I always stop before we meet the Volturi, like I could not care less. So that's what I read during June and July. Thank you for spending this heat wave with me. It gave me something to do that wasn't simply sweating. If you enjoy videos like these, please subscribe and like. I can't tell you how much it helps such a small channel like mine. Now that I'm settled in, you can expect videos to come more frequently. Moving across the country was a big surprise to me. Honestly, at this point in my life, there's very little I'm not willing to do just for the sake of change and pursuit of growth. I hope you have a wonderful day.